Hello everyone and welcome to the Dynamics 365 Practice Show. I don't say this often, but I am super excited about this episode with Aaron Elder. I don't know if you know of this gentleman's name, but he was one of the original architects, if not the original architect of Dynamics CRM, or back then MS CRM, which was built out of a acquisition of a company called iCommunicate. I've been trying to get this interview for over a year, and so to finally get it, I am extremely happy. I hope you enjoy this show as much as I did recording it. But before we go there, I just want to talk a little bit about drones. It's a proven fact that drone data can drive insights for businesses, from utility companies monitoring assets to construction companies conducting roof inspections. There's so many possible use cases. However, there's one problem I often see with drone data. Once you've got the data, how do you store it? How do you make it easy for people in your business to consume and share? MapTasker solved that problem. They enable companies using Dynamics 365 to easily store and manage drone data, storing it against a record within Dynamics 365, and even building workflows that are triggered based on that data. It's perfect for any organization that leverage the power of drone data. For more information on how you can maximize the value of your drone data, visit maptasker.com and contact the team for a demo today. Now, let's get on with the show. Full show notes for this episode can be found at nz365guy.com/142. Hi, Aaron. Welcome to the show.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the show. I've been looking forward to doing this episode for some time, being that, I've spent many years in the Dynamics ecosystem, and really, it's an opportunity to track back to those early days. But before we get underway, can you tell us a bit about what part of the world you hail from and where you call home?
Well, originally from the Maryland area, but moved out to Seattle in 2001. I've been here ever since, started a family. And yeah, so we're out here in rainy Seattle.
In rainy Seattle.
Yes.
I've had some nice days there. I'm up there a couple of times a year, and it's been not too bad.
Well, the summers are fantastic, but then the fall and winter you have to take your vitamin D pills.
So true. I'm in London. Same deal here. Tell me, what do you do when you're not working? Rest and relaxation, not that type of thing.
Rest and relaxation? Well, I'm I'm a co-founder of a startup, so I'd say I'm always working. But when I'm not doing that, I'm hanging out with the kids, skiing. Love to travel. I was over in London just a few weeks back for some fun. Actually, it was my first time getting to spend like an entire week there, and I actually just I worked out of a coffee shop, and I've been a bunch of times, but this was my first time really sort of taking it in the city.
Nice. How did you like it?
It was fantastic. It was fantastic. Great restaurants. We had some locals taking us around, saw some cool pubs. It was glorious. No other city like it in the world.
Yeah, so true. So, the reason for the podcast is really to talk about a company that you co-founded called iCommunicate. What was the time frame of the company, and why is this company significantly important to what happened some years later with Microsoft?
Oh my. So that was definitely way back. So iCommunicate, it's a funny sort of a long story, if you will. So right out of high school, I sort of, and as I went into community college, I ran into a group of people who, ran a consulting company up in Baltimore, Maryland, and joined them, and got a wonderful amount of exposure to all kinds of cool contracts, and got to work on government contracts and big corporate contracts at a really young age. This company, as I guess many services businesses do, had aspirations to be more of a services business. They wanted to do some sort of product, and they had been sort of working on a product for a while, and it never really got anywhere. And I can't remember the exact year, but maybe 99. Everyone said, okay, like this thing, it needs to be real. And so at the time, they had been working on a desktop-based product, and it was actually called Invoke. But we spun out. The team basically took their best and brightest, started coding the entire thing over again from the ground up as a web-based application. It was going to be an ASP, an application service provider. That's old school SaaS, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, exactly. And we started coding this application, in '99, and obviously, as you know, eventually sold it, I think, in 2001 to Microsoft. The idea behind it, really back in the day, it was kind of like a Zendesk before Zendesk. And so it was the services business that we came from. We had contracts at the Pentagon and other places, usually managing help desks. And so we were super familiar with ticketing and help desk automation systems. And so that was the space that we focused on.
Mm-hmm. So iCommunicate, was it ever a CRM system, or was it more just, help desk ticketing, as you say, Zendesk, or was the word CRM used? Was there any kind of, Salesforce would have been in market at that point? They would have had about, I don't know, 5 years run on you, I suppose, by that point. Were those conversations being had that early on?
Yes and no. I think the team always had sort of a grander vision of, the platform was sort of person agnostic, right? We happen to be helping people with customer support, but when we designed the data model, the idea was, hey, a customer might have all kinds of things that you need to do with it, right? So we definitely focused on the service side of the customer relationship, but the underlying core company and contact entities were certainly agnostic to that business process. In terms of Salesforce, as I was funny, just for as I prepped for this recording, I went back and I was looking at some of the old awards and trade shows we went to at iCommunicate, and we actually went to I think it was called Serum World out in San Fran, and if I recall, we actually beat Salesforce in it was Best in Show or something silly. Now,
wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, well, clearly they did way better, and that shows you what random expo awards are worth. But I think the area where we were really specialized, at least at the time, was on a really cutting edge user experience. I don't know if you've seen screenshots of iCommunicate, but we were simulating a full, robust desktop application in a browser. We were doing Ajax before it was even called that. We had real time chat, before it was. Using crazy iframe hacks, before browsers even supported that kind of stuff. Yeah,
because you would have been dealing with the evolution of the browser heavily then, wouldn't you?
Oh man, right in the thick of it. We pioneered concepts like, I remember it was the early days of IE with the MSXML. I think it was MSXML Beta 4, where you could finally do, these sort of back and forth, and we had a fallback that used an iframe with a polling JavaScript file. These techniques that are all commonplace nowadays, back then required sort of sheer will to sort of figure out and get working.
Yeah. So how did when was it? 2001, iCommunicate got acquired by Microsoft. How did that come about? Were Microsoft in market looking for a product, or did you guys go more and pitch what you had as, to them?
We were actively, you have to sort of picture the time period, right? So, and as a co-founder, everyone played their different roles. I was obviously more focused on the dev side of things, but I definitely helped out with our roadshow, if you will. And so, markets are crashing, right? Money's getting tight. Yeah. Our primary founder, he had some friends, aka like a super angel, so it was sort of our big backer. But I think we were actively out trying to raise capital. I don't remember exactly when and how Microsoft came to the table, but we were actively pitching, I wouldn't say VCs, because we were in Baltimore and the whole money scene was very different back then. But we were pitching, private equity kind of companies, super angels, various investment groups. Ultimately, Microsoft came somehow into the equation. I would imagine maybe through a broker, but I don't know for sure. They flew out, met with us. We flew out, met with them. In hindsight, it was almost as much like an acqui-hire than anything, right?
Yep.
Because what they really need, I think what really drew them about everything was the user experience. We had created cutting-edge web UX at a time when this was unheard of. Salesforce was basically a web page, and you click on links and some stuff happens. And we had a full drag and drop, resizable window, right click. It was an entire desktop experience in a browser, which is, and I think that's what they were looking to get out of the acquisition.
So did they see it was SharePoint, or what was it called? It was called something else. It wasn't called SharePoint back then.
Oh, man.
It was their kind of web app building kind of tool.
I forget what was it called before it was called SharePoint.
Oh gosh, I feel like it had the word C in it.
I have to bing this real fast or Google it real fast. SharePoint predecessor.
What would have that been?
I'm not finding anything really good here.
Something content server, something around the content server.
Okay, sure.
Something like that. But I heard, and And this is going off my memory from years ago, around the time I started with it was 2003, which you would have still been in Microsoft at that time. And that Bill Gates, when he saw it, was kind of like, why do we need this? We've already got SharePoint or whatever that was. And thank goodness he didn't walk away from it.
Well, so keep in mind that there was a lot going on in Microsoft at the time. So the division that actually bought iCommunicate was then called MBS, right? Microsoft Business Solutions, right? And I think iCommunicate got positioned as part of, what was it called? B Central, I think, was their sort of
Okay.
They're integrated, right? For all the small software solutions, side of things. And this is before they bought out Great Plains and before they rebranded as Dynamics. So I mean, I was there for all that sort of transition.
Did they already have NAV and AX at that point? Or Navision and Exapta?
Yeah, I don't think so, actually, because I can't remember when those acquisitions happened. I thought they happened after Great Plains, and I think, but my memory is sort of hazy on this part. But yeah, I mean, it was a major strategy because they bought Slalom and they brought, or not Slalom, SL or whatever that product was, and AX. And at one point in time, there was a project internally.
Solomon.
Yeah, Solomon. Thank you.
Yeah.
There was a project internally, at various points in time to like unify all those things. Right. But anyway, so back to answer your question about the SharePoint thing. And actually, I got a whole side story about how iCommunicate team sort of merged in with the Dynamics team and, et cetera. But I would say there definitely was a holy war, if you will, between the sort of two camps. And actually that sort of holy war sort of continued outside when I co-founded our consultancy to go sell CRM and do XRM and all that other stuff. But no, internally, I can definitely say that there was some feeling that SharePoint had, the wind, the tailwind of Bill and team, right? SharePoint could do no wrong. I think, my point of view, though, was that SharePoint fundamentally was kind of more of a NoSQL kind of approach, right? It was all these sort of ad hoc lists and et cetera, and that just didn't lend itself well to the kind of business process automation we were trying to achieve in the CRM world. And that concept, and I think along with all the great work that the CRM team did to sort of prove its niche and build a product out of nothing, really solidified the fact that there's room for both. And ultimately, as an integrator, we used to go to market with sort of a better together messaging, right? You use SharePoint for your document management and this, that, and the other thing, and use CRM for this, and we'll do both together.
Structured and unstructured data.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I remember telling those stories. So tell me what the early days were like after how robust, because obviously Serum 1 got released at the start of 2003. Does that sound right to you?
That does sound right, yeah.
And then at the end of 2003, Serum 1.2 was released.
Okay, yeah, that sounds right.
Because that was the first product I started on, and it was around, December in 2003 that I remember. So tell me, you didn't release that till 2003, but you're in Microsoft from 2001. What was happening for those kind of 3 years before you released to market?
Well, a lot. I mean, a lot. So, I think the brainchild of the Serum team. I have to forgive anyone whose name I forget here, but David Thatcher was a GM at the time who sort of had this idea, like, hey, we can go, take on SAP or go do this stuff, and he had a team internally, which I think came out of a product called Dealer Point. It was like a CRM for car dealers, actually. And so they said they had a Dealer Point team, and then they bought iCommunicate, and then they bought a scheduling tool, which owned the scheduling engine.
Is that right? So that was an existing tool that got made part of it, the old scheduling tool.
Yeah, made part of, but Microsoft, the teams that they were buying were builders, and so these people didn't just want to cobble things together. So this notion of doing rewrites was definitely common, right? Like, great, you've proven that you know how to do it. Now let's do it even bigger and better, right? So different teams came together. From an outsider, this is my first time at Microsoft. I'm like, oh my God, it's Microsoft, and it's going to be amazing, and they're going to have everything figured out. And once you get inside it, and I saw the sausage making, it occurred to me that a far less had been figured out than maybe I assumed. And I think this is where my years of consulting expertise sort of came in, because myself and Jason Hunt were able to, I think, bring a lot of disparate PM ideas together and really unify that into a holistic application. At one point in time, Microsoft Serum was actually not even going to ship with the UI.
Yeah, so that's what I heard. I've heard that 1.0 didn't have a UI, and I was like, I don't know, because I'd never seen 1.0. I only started on 1.2.
No, what 1.0 had a UI.
It did.
But I would say maybe it's about a year before 1.0 was released. Well, maybe a little bit before that, when Jason and I had joined, the UI was actually going to be like a sample app. Like they were going to ship an API only.
Yep, that's what I heard. Yeah, API.
And there was going to be a sample application, like a Fabricom app you could download, right?
Yep.
And I don't know. I mean, I personally wasn't very excited about that, and I had grander ambitions. I felt like it should be a real application, and it should do this other thing. And there was a great team of people who were working there, but the team who had been working on the sample app, I would say, talented and hardworking, but their background was, really coming out of the Windows world, right? They were sort of C++ coders, et cetera, kind of learning web. The iCommunicate team and I, most of us weren't even computer science majors, right? We had sort of been living and breathing the web from we were the youngsters who only knew the web, right? And so we had basically rewritten the entire sample app over the course of a couple of weeks, and it was multiple times faster, fully customizable. It's where we coined this metamorphic XSLT approach. And we actually ended up having had to sort of escalate, through David and ultimately to the VP at the time to sort of approve this major rewrite of the sample and this major pivot. The VP at the time actually happened to be Satya.
No way.
Yeah.
That's classic, right?
Yeah, super fun. Well, I would say he had vision, as he does today. And so that ended up becoming the new UI. Yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question, but
No,
yes.
that's fantastic. So tell me, and I know you're going off memory here, but that original version in 2003, what level of functionality did it have? Like, account and contact entities were in there, opportunity, case. What else? What were the big pillars that you remember that you were delivering on?
Well, here was the funny thing with my position, as application architect. Now, we had a solid team that was managing the platform, right? And frankly, I wasn't a platform guy, so we had APIs we could build on, and we could lean on them to do that. But from the application layer, what we were inundated with as a team was all these very disparate specs, activity management and service management and marketing and contacts and accounts. And honestly, I felt that I felt like each of these specs was being written in a silo, because when as a app team, we were looking to bring them all together. We're these requirements are literally at conflict with one another. I can't do this here and that there, and none of this makes any sense. And so from day one, that the term XRM, and Jason and I had come from a consulting background where all we did was business process automation over and over again, the same grids and the same forms and the same stuff for all these different companies. We set out to build a baseline set of app builder tools. We built a form framework, a grid framework, a menu framework, a data layer, a metadata layer. And then we just started proceeding to build the app on top of it using the framework that we built, right? Which I think, in hindsight, was a great idea and ultimately allowed the app to build a variety of functionality very quickly and do all kinds of great stuff. So 1.0 shipped, and it had the basic entities and it had the basic customizations. I think it had a customizable grid, customizable forms, customizable entities. And the beauty of it was that, if you add the ability to customize or add a new widget here, that instantly became available everywhere else, and it just worked. Right?
Exactly.
Now, of course, I made the cost high, right? But you add the widget, and now it shows up in the Outlook client, and it shows up on this form, and it shows up on that form. It was super cool.
I mean, even, what you achieved with the Outlook client back then was pretty phenomenal, being that I've seen all the iterations since and all the challenges the iterations have run into.
Holy cow. And talk about a technical challenge. I mean, I did not envy that team. I mean, originally, if I recall, they were building an entirely separate app in parallel. Mm-hmm. And my goodness, I mean, it wasn't from a lack of trying, but they were recreating the entire app with a client-side framework. Mm-hmm. So they had rewritten every server-side page we had in JavaScript. Which funny thing is that nowadays with modern MVVM client-side frameworks, etc., that's how you do it, right? But back then, you're trying to load multiple megabytes of JavaScript and create your own MVVM or MVC client-side framework. It was a freaking mess. So we ended up. There was a team somewhere at Microsoft that was developing this local web server, right? Cassini, what was it? And we basically found a way to ship a little local web server, which drastically reduce our time to build, drastically reduce the number of bugs that we had, right? Because it was the same code base, but between both clients.
It used to run on SQLite or something, is it?
Yeah. Literally, it was a little ASP.NET server or ASP server, right? Running, in a little tiny, a web browser or a web server. And what's funny too is that even that idea was actually ahead of its time, because nowadays with .NET Core, that's totally totally plausible, right?
Yeah. So in your mind, you've talked about Jason Hunt. I've met him. He was in Sydney, Australia, of course, promoting the platform back in those early days. And you've mentioned David Thatcher, who I've heard about before. Who are the other kind of key people that kind of shaped the vision of the product at that time?
Oh man, I don't know if I remember everyone's names. A lot of people in the PM org. Man, I'm gonna butcher these names. I think Barry Givens, Veronica Law, Aton, Justin. I'm over on the UX side. Actually, Justin and I are still friends. He's got a UX business now. He and I were best buds at the time, because it's a funny little side story. When I first arrived at Microsoft, some PM had asked, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I want to design the UX and be the lead developer. And literally, like, some of the PMs laughed out loud, because how is a developer going to design a user experience?
Mm-hmm. Exactly,
right?
Exactly. I think people would still laugh today, as in,
yes.
It's more common, but yeah.
Well, it's much more common actually now for this concept of, there's, I guess, sort of the idea that developers are really just a modern means of production, and then there's the other side that the developers actually are creatives in of themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the market has moved more towards the latter, right?
100%.
And yeah. So, again, ahead of our time at the time. Other names. I can't remember all the names. Hari was the lead. Michael John Miller, he was critical. A bunch of good guys on the platform team, but I can't.
Do you know if any of them are still on Microsoft?
Oh, I think a lot of them still are.
I've come across Barry. He's across at Avanade nowadays.
He's at Avanade now, yeah. No, some of them went off. And man, you're catching me, because I'm actually, as a person, I'm horrible with names in general.
Not a problem.
Yeah, so some of them went off to go do startups. Yeah, it's a good group. And I think the experience that we all had, it was kind of the Wild West. It was a bunch of great people sort of thrown together and go figure it out.
Was Nahil there when you were there? Because he went and did a startup. He was there. No, he probably was a bit later than you, his involvement. In fact, yes, he definitely was.
Okay,
but Azuqua was a company he started.
Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, no, sorry. Yes, no, he was there. And actually, and so was, oh my God, who's the other guy from Azuqua?
Oh, I didn't do him, really.
Well, yeah, he took over for David after David. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, a lot of good people, yeah, good team, fun time.
Yeah. What in your mind sticks as a key highlights for the 3 years you're at Microsoft, 2001 to 2004?
Oh my, totally unrelated to CRM. I remember going to Safeco Field for one of the company, the all company meetings, and Microsoft Research was demonstrating this new version of Windows, and it was mind-blowing. Because I can't remember what it was called, but they were working on an entirely new file system that was a metadata / full text search first kind of file system. And because of this, it offered all kinds of crazy abilities in Windows. And they had these dynamically rendered icons where you could zoom into the desktop and just keep zooming, and the Word document would turn from an icon into the full document, and you would just be in the document. It was incredible.
Yeah.
None of that ever shipped. It was all aspirational. Yeah, it was super cool. But Microsoft Research's job is to sort of set these massive goalposts, and then some trickles out, right? Because Microsoft had to it can do all these cool ideas, but then they got to drag on 1 billion computers into the future, right? So that's no easy easy thing to do.
and they continue to spend billions and billions now on R&D. So it's
and Craig Unger was the guy who took over for David, who also went to go co-found Azuqua.
Gotcha. Yeah. I definitely have heard that name. What else are the highlights from the period?
I'm trying to think of the highlights. I don't know. I was working like crazy. I was literally sleeping there for nights. It was a several month period where I pretty much slept at the office.
So did you have hard deadlines? That was the reason for that? Did you need a ship date or?
Well, it was a combination of hard deadlines. It was a combination of this desire to create something great. I mean, it's not that often that you get to work on a 1.0 product at a major company, right? And so, I mean, that was super cool. Now, of course, not everybody was on board with working 80 hours a week, and I can't blame them, right? In hindsight, I probably should have, slowed down a little bit. But no, I mean, time in my life, though, I remember having a lot of fun and being super pumped to just create something super cool. And there's a lot of energy, from everybody to go do that.
Yeah. Roundabout, and you're probably guessing this to some degree, what was the head count for the CRM team?
That's a good question. I think in the early days, I mean, it was definitely less than 100. I mean, we all fit in the hallway of Building 33. So it couldn't have been that big. It might have been 50
Are you serious?
people.
It was in Building 33 you were working?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I think it was 33 or Building 30. Sorry, or it's the one right off of. Oh my God, I'll have to look up the map. Anyway, it's the one that it's just south and east of the conference center. But that's where the original building was.
Gotcha.
But we all fit in a hallway, right?
That's incredible. Being that there's over 5,000 in the team now.
Well, yeah, no, I mean it's funny too. I mean, back in the early days too. Other names, that jumped on mind. Steve McClellan was there. From the Communicate team. Charles on the PM side, just a lot of energy. It was super fun. But we all fit in that hallway, and then fast forward, and we outgrew that, and then we moved over to I think 110, and we got like a whole floor over there, and that was a big deal. And then at one point in time, there was a big effort to bring on the IDC, right? So the India Development Center.
Yep.
And they took over the marketing automation module.
Gotcha.
So like that whole module was built by the IDC.
Gotcha. And I mean, they've definitely had a lot to do, even in more, I wouldn't say near recent times, but I know they've definitely had a lot of involvement. What were the lessons you learnt from, maybe not a technology point of view, but like, you've been involved in other startups since. What were any key lessons that you learnt working for one of the biggest companies out there that you've been able to take forward and apply?
Wow. I say there's probably too many to list because I mean, when we left Microsoft, and that was a really hard decision for me to go do that. I mean, leaving the safety of Microsoft and et cetera. In hindsight, though, I think Microsoft could have done a better job of retaining me, to be honest. Yep. I had worked incredibly hard, and I think I ended up getting like a stock award that was worth like $8,000.
Wow!
Right?
Wow!
Yeah. I mean, and I was under the impression that like that was a fight to even get that. Right? Is what I was told at the time. Right?
Yeah, nuts.
Yeah, and so I mean, it's sort of this old joke that sometimes people tell you the fastest way to get promoted at Microsoft is to leave and then come back. Right? Yeah. But the thing is, I'd say it's for most companies. Which is super sad because, I mean, actually in my current company where we work on talent, software, this notion of promoting within and internal growth programs, something that was all super big, in the, 80s and before, but really went the way of a dodo. I think probably is going to make a resurgence or need to. Talent engagement and investing in your current team is something that's certainly on top of mind. But to answer your question, I mean, when we left, and I made sure to, I think we gave them like 3 months notice, right? I mean, I wanted to have the smoothest transition possible, et cetera. One of my big focuses was to take all the things I had learned at Microsoft and apply them to a small business. Right, and that's kind of the secret sauce of when we went and we formed Invoke Systems to go do that. I mean, just basic dev practices that security practices, build automation, test automation. I mean, all this stuff that was just sort of like not even on my horizon. Right, we worked to scale it down and to right size it for the company, for the companies that we built after Microsoft.
So Invoke Systems, because you mentioned that before I communicate. So did you go back into the same business or had that?
A little confusing because the consultancy's original name was the Alpha Computing Group. Probably because it would like put it first in the phone book.
Yeah.
The product that Alpha was creating was called Invoke.
Gotcha.
And so I think they probably owned the trademark to it. So then after Alpha spun out iCommunicate, the company renamed itself Invoke.
Gotcha.
So it's a little confusing. So the product became the company name, and the other product kind of went off. And then while I was over at Microsoft, Invoke Systems sort of had a change in leadership. The people who had spun out iCommunicate had sold a business to the other founders. And then when Jason and I left Microsoft, we basically bought in to that company.
Yeah, and I see you, as based on what's on LinkedIn, you went heavily into being a dynamic Serum partner yourself. And I find this interesting because across my career of 20 years, working with Microsoft, I've noticed that a lot of Microsoft employees have kind of like seen the opportunity that often people in the market are not seeing, and then they leave Microsoft and go and execute on that opportunity. Is that what kind of led to what that next phase of Invoke Systems was like?
Well, sorry. When we joined Invoke did all kinds of stuff. I mean, they did. I think they were. I forget the name of the product. It was like a automated deployment product and random services. And when Jason and I came in, we sort of came in with a business plan to sort of, hey, and actually Jim Stout at the time was really trying to push Microsoft CRM into all kinds of customers super early on. It was actually I remember that. Anyway, the plan and the idea of Jason and I joining was to completely repivot Invoke to be exclusively like the number one dynamic CRM partner in the world. Like the idea was, let's go all in on that. And the way we were going to do it was by selling Microsoft CRM as an application development platform. And we were going to pre-build a bunch of widgets, if you will, to accelerate our services offerings.
So the true XRM story.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, what we were laying out is the playbook by which Avanade executed, Power Objects executed. Everyone sort of executed the same playbook, right? So that's what we were doing. Yeah, no, cool. And by the way, just a few of the names I feel like I want to throw out. From the early days, Vishal, early days, Alana Smith, early days. All these people contributed to making such a great product.
Yeah, so good, so good. Tell me, what's the true story about Serum 2.0?
True story of Serum 2.0. Well, 1.2. So the field was out there trying to sell CRM 1.0 and, basically getting their teeth kicked in. And so the product team, and this was before Agile and continuous development, right? So it was classic waterfall, right? So like, what can we do to friggin' get this thing international and fix these top issues, right? And that was 1.2. And then, and that sort of happens sort of as quickly as possible. Then moving forward, we started working on Serum 2.0, right? Somewhere I even had like a screenshot with my Easter egg with a Kilroy in it, and it said Serum 2.0. And I don't remember what happened, but I do recall there being joking about the fact that no one trusts a Microsoft product until it hits version 3.
Wow!
I don't know if you've heard that before, but it was sort of an internal joke. And I think it partly had to do with the fact that like time had just sort of passed enough, and the amount of improvements that had made it into what could have been called 2.0. I think just effectively everyone's head that they thought, okay, great, 1.2 is 2, and we're just jumping ahead to 3 because 3 is big, right? I think 3 added customer relationships and more customers. I mean, it was a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Worthy of a major version jump, or multiple therefore.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. It's good. It's good to understand that. How much towards your end days then at Microsoft did Salesforce really start to become the bullseye in the market, the target, the enemy, if you like, from that perspective?
Well, I think while I was at Microsoft, I didn't really pay much attention to Salesforce. Yeah, I was just sort of heads down creating, and I still to this day, with my current company, I try not to focus too much on what others are doing. If I can just make my system as great as it absolutely can be, if you build it, they should come. It was probably a few years before, I don't know, I felt like we had a lot of greenfield opportunities, and we're still moving people off SAP and off of custom things, right? So we really didn't see Salesforce that much. At least I don't feel like we did. Later on, absolutely, yeah. So I guess I can't provide a great answer to that one.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Would you have done anything differently, as in back in that period of time?
How so? You mean to the...
Anything around, more the technology, architecture? Did you feel that you made all the right bets in the right places for what you produced?
No. I think the short answer is that the hindsight of it is easy for people at any big company to sort of get sort of an ivory tower point of view of things, right? So we're all heads down. We're creating what we think is going to be amazing. And honestly, it's not until you like eat your own dog food that you actually really sort of feel where the pain is. And so it wasn't until we went out and tried to go implement Microsoft Serum, and solve all these problems, we sort of realized like, holy cow, like what do you mean you can't do this?
Yeah.
And for me, it was always super frustrating because I'm like, actually, even in the early days, I'd be like, I know the line of code to go change guys. Like, can you just like go fix this right here?
Yeah.
So in hindsight, I think a lot of stuff could have been made a little more flexible from day one. Just the things that really lean in and support the implementers who were trying to push the boundaries of it, if that makes any sense.
So moving on from there, you were in Invoke for 2, almost 3 years, and then did that become Essentium? Did it
Nope.
Or did it acquire?
Well, we merged. It was an acquisition, but we became the Serum division of Essentium. Yep.
Right, and then ultimately they went to Evernote, got acquired by Evernote. Is that right?
Yep. And then later on, so the division that they acquired then got spun out.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, and actually, I don't know what happened to Essentium after that. I think they maybe rebranded and some of those stuff.
Because when you're full, because I remember Essentium on my radar back then, and I thought it was like kind of sold as a full digital agency.
It was, and I think, again, talking about being early, right? They were on the forefront of what is now called digital transformation, right? Half, agency, experience engineers, taxonomy, right? Half dev, making all your dreams come true, right? So, at the time, it was another better together story, right? But the reality was that, the agency team and the dev team, the technical side, the consulting side, I don't know if we ever got as purely integrated as anyone would have ever liked, but it was certainly a dream of a leadership and certainly a dream of mine to sort of create this unified capability, which now is commonplace. I mean, now it is digital transformation, and it's what everyone's doing, right?
Yeah, so true. How do you feel, in hindsight, the spearhead of building a product that's now become one of the, core pillars in Microsoft, $1 billion line of business for them. How do you feel about being involved in that very creative, first iterations of what we have today?
I'm incredibly proud of it. I don't know. It's a major accomplishment. I feel awesome about it. And I'm so thankful for the opportunity to have done it and all the great people that I got to work with along the way. It's just fantastic. It's funny now, though. I mean, it's kind of like old news, if you will. Like, after doing CRM for so long, like, I don't want to say I got sick of it, but
yeah.
I was ready to move on to other things.
Yeah.
I often joke, I've forgotten more about Microsoft CRM than most people will ever know, right?
Yeah, exactly. So tell us what you're doing today. As in, what's your business? Bring us right up to the present.
Sure. And by the way, I have to throw out a few more shout outs too. Randy Wallingford, Mike Bischoff, Oliver, Ali Sharad, all more great team members out there. There was so much involved in getting that product off the ground that you just got to make sure that, I don't know if I mentioned Alana Smith as well. Just a lot of great people who made that happen. So today, as I mentioned, my entire career has been doing some sort of CRM system or building some sort of consulting business. And through that journey of Alpha, Invoke, Essentium, and then Avanade, and by extension, Accenture and Accenture Federal, I really experienced, the need for what is now called a recruiting CRM. Right, a verticalized CRM solution. The funny thing is that even with Dynamics, we actually built recruiting CRMs on top of Dynamics. We built applicant tracking systems on Dynamics for governments and for banks and for all these different people. And even we even built one for ourselves in-house. So what my current company does, Crelate, is we are a built from the ground up recruiting CRM / applicant tracking system. And we really focus on professional services businesses, staffing, consulting agencies, companies whose primary business is talent. If you need to manage 2 workflows, which are your sales and opportunity pipeline and your talent pipeline, and you need to get those 2 things to line up, which is what any services business needs to do, that's what a product like ours does.
Awesome. Are you gearing up to be acquired again by Microsoft too? Because they got a talent Dynamics product now.
Well, it's funny. I actually pitched Microsoft on Dynamics Talent before that was released. I had started to correlate, and I'm like, oh, you know what? Dynamics needs to get into the talent space, is what I said. I'm like, Oracle has something, IBM has something. Where's Dynamics? Yeah, no. So I mean, Dynamics Talent is there. It focuses more on the corporate market.
Yeah, I'm not 100. Like, I haven't seen it kind of land well, across all the networks I'm involved in. I'm not hearing a lot about it in the last 12 months.
No, I know. And unfortunately, the Dynamics team there's been a lot of false starts, if you will, in terms of these verticals or these accelerators that people have tried to achieve on Dynamics CRM. I mean, there was the field service one. There's a bunch of them.
Field service is going well. It's probably one of the best ones that have executed.
Well, and to be clear, I don't keep track of it, but there's been a lot of them over the years, right?
Yeah, totally.
I think Dynamics Talent probably there's maybe some confusion or some I don't know. I'm just speaking from someone who looks at it in passing. With Microsoft's acquisition of LinkedIn, where does Dynamic Talent fit? Where does LinkedIn fit? Where does LinkedIn Recruiter fit? It's a lot of stuff.
I take it your solution plugs into LinkedIn?
It does, but with a variety of sourcing tools, right? I mean, we're not actually in LinkedIn's preferred program. I'd love to be if they want to reach out. The funny thing is that for a real recruiter, real recruiters, LinkedIn is really just a phone book with no phone numbers, right? And
as a LinkedIn is?
Yeah.
Well, you can get to the phone numbers.
Well, if you're connected with them, right? Yeah, exactly. But our customers, LinkedIn is just one of many places of how they source candidates, right?
Yeah.
And when you're doing high volume recruiting, you need to be across a variety of inbound and outbound, sourcing mechanisms.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the questions that I had, and it's been very interesting. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I don't think so. I mean, hopefully this was of somewhat interest to your...
I tell you, I think a lot of people, well, anyone that's worked as long as I have in it, I think will find it very, very interesting.
Right. No, I mean, it was a super fun ride, and we were constantly pushing the limits. It's funny too, like some of the early features that were added, like, I'm trying to think of some side stories. Like, do you remember ISV config?
Yep.
Like that feature was kind of like snuck in there, like directly with this idea. I was hearing feedback from early integrators, and they're like, "Holy cow! If we could just," because the hacks people were having to do, right? People were like in there editing the HTML. Because they just wanted to put an iframe and, just wanted to get a window in there.
Unsupported customizations.
Totally. But you had to do it, right?
Yeah.
You had to do it. And because you could, good integrators were building amazing solutions, right? It was just, I don't want to say it was the Wild West, but it was a fast, everything was moving so fast. And that was super fun. And I mean, the rest is history. I mean, all that hard work across the industry planted a lot of seeds, and now now Dynamics is $1 billion business, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right, I like to wrap up with a few quick fire questions, which are very random. They're not so much about business, but more about life and stuff. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay, what's one of your pet peeves?
Oh my, I don't know if I can do a quick fire answer. How about people who don't live up to their commitments? If you make a commitment, you should do it.
Yep, agreed. Who's someone you really admire?
Satya would be one person that I absolutely admire. Yeah,
that's good.
I'll stop there.
Yeah, if you could create one holiday, what would you create?
How about National Self-Improvement Day?
Nice, that's good, right?
Yeah, a time to reflect, to take feedback, and to take action to better yourself.
I like it. What was the hardest decision you've ever had to make?
Hard decision? Oh my, I mean, this is probably getting divorced, to be honest, on a personal level.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Been there, done that. What's the last random thing that made you smile?
Last random thing that made me smile. I actually had a really good one, but I can't recall what it was right now. You have to give me a second to think about it.
Yeah, you come back to you. I'll give you a last one. Here's your last one. Would you rather be slightly late or super early? I think I know your answer.
Probably super early. Is that what you're going to guess?
Yeah. Well, based on the first question I gave you about keeping your commitments, I would have thought that would have been your answer, yeah.
Yeah. Although what's funny is that when it comes to meetings, I'm not known for being punctual. Unfortunately, it's because I tend to overcommit, on all things. Yeah. No, sorry, I can't think of a good one for the last thing that made me smile.
That's all right.
Yeah, Yeah, actually, I'll give you one. The last time I got really excited, one of the best things that I love, and this is something that I think sometimes larger companies can lose. All the great stuff that happens in my product today, Correlate, is stuff that the dev team does of their own volition, sort of while they're in there.
So they're being creative.
Yes, and it's funny when the corporate world brings down security policies and testing and all these documentation and all these reasons to if done poorly can stymie creativity. Anyway, one of my developer teams that had snuck in a feature that we have been talking about doing for like 3 years, and that brought a lot of joy to my heart. I'm like that is freaking cool. I'm so glad you added that.
That is so cool. That is so cool.
And so that brightened my week last week.
Nice. If you could recommend somebody as a guest on the show in future, who would you recommend?
Oh my! If you can get Jason Hunt, that'd probably be amazing.
I've been trying to get Jason Hunt for a very long time, but unsuccessfully. Actually, I know how to get to him, I think. I just haven't attempted that hard. It was just we had somebody in common that said, hey, I know Aaron, so.
Well, it's funny. You should maybe also, because I don't know if Jason, how much time he even spends on CRM these days, right? You might want to look at, Vishal or Barry or someone else who might.
Yeah.
Or David Kohar.
Oh, wow. David Kohar as well, eh? Was he in Microsoft?
He was not at Microsoft. He was at Essentium.
Yeah. He's still active in the channel, and of course, same as Barry, right? Barry's I just saw him at a conference just back a bit, so he's still active.
I believe so, yeah.
He's got into the marketing side of things.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, digital transformation's everywhere now, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, if you're not doing that,
yeah, so true. Aaron, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. If people want to understand more about your business, where's the best place for them to find you?
They should check us out at Crelate.com, CRELATE.com. The name comes from Create Relationships. We're an all-in-one recruiting, CRM, and applicant tracking system built for recruiting, staffing, and consulting agencies.
Hey, thanks again for joining me on the Dynamics 365 show. Once again, I just hope you enjoyed that history lesson on the origin story of Dynamics, like where we've come from with the Microsoft journey. Full show notes for this episode, you can go to nz365guy.com/142. I'm your host, Business Application MVP, Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. Bye for now.